She walked into that divorce signing 7 months pregnant, hiding the truth beneath an emerald coat. Her husband had called her defective, broken, a wife who could not give him a child. He was about to discover how wrong he was. But what should have been her moment of triumph turned into a nightmare she never saw coming. Because the woman waiting in the lobby, the blonde with ice blue eyes and a predator's smile, had a plan. A plan that involved taking everything from her. Her dignity, her reputation, and most terrifyingly, her
I
unborn
admit it,
son.
I moved the money just
What
like she
Abigail
asked.
did not know yet was that this woman had done this before.
It's all gone.
3 wealthy men, 3 destroyed marriages, 1 dead woman. And Abigail was next on her list. This is a story about betrayal, survival, and the moment when a woman who had been told she was worthless discovered exactly how powerful she could be. Stay until the end, because what happens in that courtroom will leave you speechless. If stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to fight for something everyone told you that you could not win? I read every single comment, and your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it today. Now let us begin. 7 months ago, my husband looked me in the eye and called me defective, broken, a wife who could not give him the one thing that mattered. He said those words with the same casual cruelty he might use to dismiss a disappointing business deal, as if 8 years of marriage could be reduced to a simple equation of value and worthlessness. Today, I would walk into that conference room and show him exactly how wrong he was. Today, I would set myself free. The autumn wind scattered golden leaves across the sidewalk as I approached the gleaming glass doors of Hamilton and Associates. My heart hammered against my ribs with each step, but my stride remained steady. I had practiced this walk 100 times in my small apartment, rehearsing the moment when everything would change. I knew exactly how to hold my shoulders, how to lift my chin, how to make my face a mask of calm composure, even when everything inside me screamed with anticipation. I paused at the entrance and placed one hand briefly on my belly, hidden beneath the carefully draped emerald wool coat I had chosen for this occasion. The fabric fell in strategic folds, concealing what I needed to conceal until exactly the right moment. Beneath my palm, I felt the gentle flutter of movement. My son, reminding me why I was here, why I had to be strong. The automatic doors slid open with a quiet hiss. I stepped inside. The reception area smelled of leather and fresh coffee, that particular scent of old money and quiet power that permeated every space Brandon inhabited. Crystal vases held arrangements of white lilies. Abstract art in muted grays hung on the walls. Everything tasteful, everything expensive, everything designed to remind visitors that they were in the presence of people who mattered. A young woman with perfectly styled auburn hair sat behind a curved mahogany desk. She barely glanced up from her computer screen as I approached. "Mrs. Whitmore, conference room 3, second door on your right. Mr. Whitmore has already arrived." Mrs. Whitmore. The name felt strange now, like a coat that no longer fit. In less than an hour, I would no longer be Mrs. Whitmore. I would be Abigail Carter again, the woman I was before Brandon convinced me to disappear into his world. I walked down the corridor, my low heels clicking against the marble floor in a steady rhythm. Framed degrees and certificates lined the walls. Harvard Law, Yale, Cambridge. Cold, sterile. Monuments to a world where people are transactions and emotions are weaknesses. Where marriages are mergers and divorces are hostile takeovers. I reached the door marked Conference Room 3. Paused, took one final breath that filled my lungs completely before releasing it slowly. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times. What I would say, how I would stand, the exact words I would use when his world came crashing down. But nothing truly prepares you for the moment you face the man who broke you and show him you are still standing. Nothing prepares you for the exquisite satisfaction of watching understanding dawn in eyes that once looked at you with contempt. I opened the door. The conference room was everything I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. A mahogany table that could seat 20, polished to a mirror shine. Fresh flowers in crystal vases. Carafes of water with lemon slices floating like tiny life rafts. Brandon Whitmore sat at the head of the table, because of course he did. Even in a neutral space, he had to establish dominance. At 38, he remained devastatingly handsome in the way that money preserves. Dark hair swept back from his forehead without a single strand out of place. Gray eyes that could shift from warm to Arctic in an instant. A charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people earn in a month, tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders and trim waist. Two attorneys flanked him like sentinels. Harrison Cole, the senior partner in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of tan that comes from weekend golf games, sat to his right. A younger associate, perhaps 30, with nervous eyes and an ill-fitting suit, sat to his left, furiously taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Brandon looked up when I entered. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps? Or confusion. He had expected me to arrive broken, diminished, begging for scraps from the table of our shared life. He had expected the Abigail who cried herself to sleep for months after he moved out. The Abigail who lost 15 pounds because she could not eat. The Abigail he had systematically dismantled over 8 years until she barely remembered who she was. Instead, I walked in with my chin high and my shoulders back. My chestnut hair fell in soft waves past my shoulders, healthy and shining in a way it had not been in years. Minimal makeup, just enough to highlight my features without hiding behind a mask. I looked healthier than I did during the final months of our marriage, when his constant criticism had whittled away at my self-worth until I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Abigail, thank you for coming. His voice carried that practiced charm he used in public, the one that made strangers think he was the most gracious man in the world. Only I knew what lurked beneath that polished surface. Let us make this as painless as possible, shall we? I took my seat across from him without responding to his greeting. Patricia Morrison settled beside me in a chair that put us on equal footing with Brandon's legal army. She was a fierce woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and dark eyes that missed nothing. She wore a navy suit that cost a fraction of what Brandon's attorneys charged per hour. But she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had won battles far harder than this one. Patricia had seen me at my lowest. 3 months ago, I had walked into her office barely able to string 2 sentences together, clutching a folder of documents with shaking hands. She had listened to my story without interruption, then looked me in the eye and said 5 words that changed everything. We are going to win. We have reviewed the settlement terms, Patricia said, her voice crisp and professional. My client is prepared to sign. The meeting proceeded with clinical efficiency. Assets were divided with the precision of surgeons parceling out organs. The penthouse apartment in Manhattan, valued at $4.2 million, would remain with Brandon. The vacation home in Aspen, currently on the market for $3.8 million, would be sold and proceeds split 60-40 in his favor. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, retirement funds, all reduced to numbers on spreadsheets that told the story of a life being divided into before and after. Brandon had been surprisingly generous in the settlement, or at least what passed for generous in his world. Perhaps out of guilt, though I doubted he was capable of feeling guilty about anything, more likely to expedite the process. He was eager to move on, to marry Cassandra, to start the family I supposedly could not give him. The irony of that thought made me want to laugh out loud, but I kept my face carefully neutral. I remained quiet through most of the proceedings, hands folded on the table. I wanted nothing beyond what was fair, nothing beyond what would allow me to start fresh. The penthouse could stay with Brandon. I had never felt at home there anyway, surrounded by his mother's antiques and his father's expectations. The Aspen house could be sold. I needed only enough to survive while I rebuilt my life from the ground up. Patricia slid the final documents across the polished mahogany table. The paper made a soft whisper against the wood, like a secret being shared. All that remains is your signature, Abigail. Then this will be finalized. Brandon leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. His gray eyes moved over my face, searching for something. Weakness, perhaps. Some sign that I was barely holding myself together. Some crack in my composure that he could exploit. You look different, he said finally. Are you seeing someone? The question was designed to throw me off balance, to remind me that he still thought he had the right to know the intimate details of my life, that he still believed he owned some part of me. I met his gaze without flinching. That is no longer your concern, Brandon. Something tightened in his jaw. A muscle twitched near his temple. He was not accustomed to being dismissed, especially not by me. For 8 years, I had deferred to his opinions, his preferences, his demands. I had made myself small to fit into the space he allowed me to occupy. Not anymore. He gestured impatiently toward the papers. Sign, I have dinner reservations. Of course he did. Probably at Percé or Le Bernardin, somewhere he could be seen with Cassandra on his arm. Somewhere he could show off his new acquisition while the ink was still drying on the end of his old one. I reached for the pen. Patricia had placed it precisely where I needed it, angled toward my right hand. And as I leaned forward, the emerald coat shifted. The fabric, carefully arranged for hours that morning, fell open slightly. Just enough. Just enough to reveal what I had been hiding, what I had planned to reveal at exactly this moment, when the papers were almost signed, when he thought he had won. For a moment, no one moved. The room seemed to freeze, like a photograph capturing the instant before everything changes. The junior attorney's pen hovered above his legal pad. Harrison Cole's hand paused halfway to his water glass. Patricia's lips curved in the smallest of smiles, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Brandon's eyes dropped to my midsection. The curve of my belly was round, unmistakable, undeniable, visible through the gap in my coat like a truth that could no longer be hidden. The pen he was holding clattered to the table. The sound was sharp and sudden in the silence, like a gunshot. His face drained of color. Not gradually, the way shock usually works. Instantly. Completely. Like someone had pulled a plug and let all the blood rush away at once. His tan, maintained by weekly sessions at an exclusive spa, suddenly looked artificial against his pallid skin. "Mr. Whitmore?" Harrison Cole leaned forward, concern creasing his weathered face. "Are you all right?" Brandon did not respond. He was staring at my belly as if he could not comprehend what he was seeing, as if the evidence of his own eyes contradicted everything he believed to be true. His mouth opened, then closed. Opened again. No words came out. 30 seconds of absolute silence stretched through the room like a held breath. I counted each one in my head, savoring them. 30 seconds of Brandon Whitmore rendered speechless. 30 seconds of the great man reduced to gaping confusion. The junior attorney exchanged a bewildered glance with Harrison. Neither of them understood what was happening. They saw a pregnant woman and a shocked man, but they did not know the history. They did not know about the years of fertility treatments, the accusations, the blame. Patricia watched with quiet satisfaction. She had been waiting for this moment almost as long as I had. She had helped me plan it, down to the color of the coat and the angle of my chair. Brandon stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a harsh screech that made everyone flinch. He gripped the edge of the table with both hands like he might collapse without its support, his knuckles turning white with the force of his grip. "What?" His voice came out barely above a whisper, cracked and hoarse. "What is that?" I set down the pen. Slowly, deliberately, I let the coat fall completely open. The navy maternity dress beneath was simple but elegant, chosen specifically to emphasize what I was revealing. My hands moved to rest on my belly, protective, proud. "This is your son, Brandon." 7 months along. Brandon's legs gave out. He dropped back into his chair, missing it slightly, having to catch himself on the armrest. The movement was graceless, undignified, nothing like the controlled precision he usually displayed. For a man who prided himself on never showing weakness, it was a complete unraveling. "That is impossible." His voice shook. "The doctors said you could not." "The doctors said it would be difficult. They never said impossible." I kept my voice steady, as though my heart was racing with a complicated mixture of triumph and pain. "You decided I was broken. You decided I was defective. You gave up on us before we ever had a real chance. But we tried for years." "No." I stood, tall, unshakable. I wanted him to see me at my full height, wanted him to understand that I was not the cowering woman he had left behind. "You tried for years to find someone to blame. First the doctors, then the treatments, then the timing. And when you could not blame anything else anymore, you blamed me. You told me I was worthless, that I could not give you the one thing that mattered, that you needed to find someone who could actually make you a father." I watched the realization crash over him like a wave. The implications of what I was saying, the timeline, the math. This baby was conceived while we were still married, while you were already sharing your bed with Cassandra, while you were telling me our marriage was over because I could not give you an heir. I let the words sink in, each one a stone dropping into still water. Do the math, Brandon. This child is yours, and I am keeping him. Brandon ran his hands through his hair, destroying its perfect styling. Dark strands fell across his forehead, making him look younger and somehow more vulnerable. His mind was racing. I could see it in his eyes, the calculations spinning behind them, the implications, the complications. The way this changed everything he thought he knew. If this baby is mine, then everything changes. His voice was stronger now, though still unsteady. We cannot get divorced. We have to try again. For the child. No. The word hung in the air between us. Simple, final, absolute. Miguel, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For the first time in 8 years, I am being completely reasonable. My voice did not waver. I had practiced this speech in the mirror until I could deliver it without a single tremor. You wanted this divorce because you decided I was worthless. Because I could not give you an heir. Well, I am giving you one. But I am not giving you me. Not anymore. His expression hardened. The shock was fading and something colder was taking its place. Something calculating. I recognized that look. It was the one he wore in business negotiations when he was about to destroy an opponent. You cannot keep my child from me. I am not keeping anything from you. You will have visitation rights, support arrangements, everything legal and proper. I gathered my coat around my belly, preparing to leave. But I will not be your wife. You destroyed that possibility the night you called me useless. The night you told me you needed to find a real woman to give you a family. How do I even know it is mine? The question hung in the air like poison, like a snake striking without warning. Excuse me? 7 months pregnant, and you are only revealing this now at the divorce signing? His voice grew stronger, more confident. He was finding his footing again, constructing a narrative that served his purposes. That is awfully convenient, Abigail. For all I know, you got pregnant by someone else and you are trying to trap me. Patricia's hand tightened on her pen. I felt the words like a physical blow, but I did not flinch. I had expected this. Patricia had warned me. Men like Brandon, when cornered, always attack. Always look for ways to discredit, to deflect, to shift blame onto anyone but themselves. A DNA test will prove everything. Then we will wait for the DNA test before I acknowledge anything. He turned to his attorneys, his composure returning with each passing second. Add a clause. No acknowledgement of paternity until test results confirm it. This divorce proceeds as planned. He picked up the pen from where it had fallen, signed his name with sharp, angry strokes, shoved the papers across the table toward me. Your turn. I looked at him, really looked. This man who had promised to love me, to protect me, to cherish me until death parted us. Now looking at me like I was a con artist trying to pull one over on him. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw the papers in his face, to tell him exactly what I thought of his suspicions and his cruelty and his breathtaking arrogance. But that was not the plan. That was not how I would win. I signed because I would not beg, would not break, would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. You will have the DNA results within 2 weeks. I stood, gathered my coat around my belly with careful dignity. Goodbye, Brandon. I walked out, did not look back, did not falter. The lobby was bright and sterile, all marble floors and recessed lighting. I was almost to the main entrance, almost to freedom, when I saw her. Cassandra Hayes sat in a leather chair near the windows, legs crossed at the ankle in that finishing school pose she affected. Designer bag in her lap, probably worth more than my monthly rent. Blonde hair perfectly styled in loose waves that probably took an hour and a professional to achieve. She was scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for a table at a restaurant, as if her presence here was the most natural thing in the world. When she saw me, her lips curled into a smile. It was not a pleasant expression. There was something predatory in it, something cold beneath the surface beauty. Well, well, the ex-wife. She rose from her chair with the fluid grace of someone who had been trained to make every movement an artwork. How did it go in there? Sign your life away? I kept walking, did not engage, did not give her the satisfaction of a response. But Cassandra moved to block my path. She was taller than me, especially in her 4-inch heels, and she used her height deliberately, looking down at me with those ice blue eyes. I want you to know that I am honest to take very good care of Brandon. He deserves someone who can actually make him happy, someone who is not. Her gaze dropped to my midsection, to where the coat had shifted again, revealing the curve beneath. Her perfectly maintained composure cracked. Broken, she had noticed. What is that? Her voice rose, losing its cultured smoothness. Are you? That is none of your concern. Are you pregnant? The shriek echoed through the marble lobby. The receptionist looked up from her desk, eyes wide. Two men in expensive suits paused their conversation near the elevator. A woman with a briefcase turned to stare. I pushed past Cassandra without another word. My shoulder brushed against hers, harder than necessary, and I did not apologize. Behind me, I heard Cassandra's heels clicking rapidly toward the conference room. Her voice carried clearly in the acoustic space. Brandon! Brandon! I did not stop, did not turn around. I kept my pace steady and my head high until I pushed through the glass doors and felt the autumn air on my face. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. Before the tears came. I had done it. I had shown him the truth. I had watched his world tilt on its axis, and he had chosen to doubt me. But at least I was free. 2 weeks later, I sat at my desk in my small apartment, working on a freelance design project. The space was a far cry from the penthouse I had shared with Brandon. Third floor walk-up in a quiet neighborhood. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a combined living room and kitchen that felt cozy rather than cramped. The ceilings were high and the windows faced east, filling the rooms with soft morning light. I had spent the first month after moving in making it mine. Soft cream walls to replace the stark white of the Whitmore penthouse. Touches of blue and yellow in the throw pillows and curtains. Plants on every available surface, their green leaves bringing life to corners that had been empty. A small nursery corner taking shape by the window, where I could already picture a crib with a mobile spinning gently overhead. This apartment was nothing like what I had grown accustomed to over 8 years of marriage. There was no doorman to greet me, no concierge to handle my packages, no cleaning service to make everything pristine while I was out. I did my own laundry now, washed my own dishes, scrubbed my own floors on hands and knees. I had never been happier. My laptop screen glowed with the layout I was designing for a small business client. A logo refresh for a local bakery, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and reminded me that I had skills beyond being Brandon Whitmore's wife. I had abandoned my career when Brandon insisted his wife did not need to work. Now graphic design was my lifeline, my proof that I could survive on my own. I had savings too, money I had secretly squirreled away from the household budget for 2 years, my escape fund. Brandon had given me a generous allowance for clothing and incidentals, never bothering to check whether I actually spent it. Every month I had transferred a portion to a separate account he did not know existed, enough to survive 6 months if I was careful, enough to give me options. My phone buzzed on the desk beside me. Patricia Morrison's name flashed on the screen. DNA results are in, she said without preamble. Brandon received his copy this morning. My heart stuttered. And? 99.97% match. That baby is his. Congratulations, Abigail. You were telling the truth. I was always telling the truth. I know you were. But now he knows it too. And men like Brandon Whitmore do not handle being wrong very well. Patricia's voice carried a warning. Watch your back. He is going to react, and it probably will not be pleasant. I ended the call and returned to my work, but Patricia's words echoed in my mind. Watch your back, as if I had not been watching my back for the past 8 years, as if I did not know exactly what Brandon was capable of when his pride was wounded. That afternoon, I decided I needed groceries. The walk to the store was only a few blocks, and the doctor had encouraged me to keep moving despite my expanding belly. Stay active, he had said. Your body knows what it is doing. I pushed a cart through the organic produce section of the small market near my apartment, reaching for apples that were slightly misshapen but perfectly ripe. The kind of apples the expensive stores would never carry, but that tasted better than anything from Brandon's preferred gourmet grocers. That was when I sensed someone watching me. I looked up, scanning the aisle with studied casualness. A woman stood at the far end, near the display of seasonal squash. Early 50s, I guessed. Elegant in that old money way that had nothing to do with current fashion and everything to do with generations of breeding. Cashmere cardigan in dove gray. Pearl earrings that were probably family heirlooms. Perfectly maintained blonde hair going gracefully silver at the temples. Our eyes met. The woman's expression was strange, pained almost, like she was looking at someone she recognized from a photograph, someone she pitied. "Can I help you?" I kept my voice polite but firm. The woman startled visibly as if she had not expected me to notice her watching. She looked away quickly, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I am sorry, I thought you were someone else." She disappeared around the corner before I could respond, moving with surprising speed for someone her age. Strange. I filed the encounter away and continued my shopping, but something about the woman nagged at the back of my mind. The way she had looked at me, the guilt in her expression, as if she knew something about me, as if she was apologizing for something she had not yet done. 3 days later, a knock came at my apartment door. I was not expecting anyone. Patricia always called first. I had no friends left from my marriage, having allowed Brandon to systematically isolate me from everyone I cared about. The only person who visited regularly was my upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Miller, who brought me homemade soup and checked on me with the concerned attention of a grandmother. I checked the peephole. Brandon, alone. No attorneys, no assistants, no Cassandra. He was holding a bouquet of white lilies, which had been my favorite flowers back when such things mattered. Back before he used that knowledge to manipulate me. Back before every gift became a transaction. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but I kept the chain on, so the door only opened a few inches. "Before you slam this in my face," he said quickly, "I am not here to fight. I am here to apologize." I studied him through the gap. He looked different somehow, humbled. The arrogant set of his shoulders had softened. His perfectly tailored shirt was slightly rumpled, as if he had dressed in a hurry. There were shadows under his eyes that expensive concealer could not quite hide. "I got the DNA results," he continued. "You were telling the truth. About everything. And I was cruel to doubt you. Yes, you were. Cassandra and I are done. I ended it the moment I saw those results." My eyebrows rose despite my best efforts to remain impassive. I had not expected that. Cassandra had seemed so confident, so certain of her hold on him. She was furious, made a scene, but I realized. He paused, seeming to search for words. I realized I was so focused on blaming you for our fertility struggles that I never stopped to think about what I was doing, who I was becoming. He took a step closer. His gray eyes were wet, though I could not tell if the emotion was genuine. "I was wrong, Abigail. About everything. Can we try again? For our son?" Part of me softened, the part that had loved him for 8 years. The part that remembered how he used to look at me when we were first married, like I was the most precious thing in his world. This was the Brandon I had fallen in love with. Vulnerable, present, real. But another part of me, the part that had learned hard lessons about trust and betrayal, remembered Patricia's warning. "Men like Brandon do not handle being wrong very well. I do not know if I can trust you again." "Then let me earn it. Dinner tomorrow night, just the two of us. No attorneys, no pressure. Just talking like we used to." I hesitated. The old Abigail would have said yes immediately, would have thrown open the door and fallen into his arms, grateful for any scrap of affection he deigned to offer. But I was not the old Abigail anymore. "One dinner, that is all I am agreeing to. That is all I am asking." His relieved smile looked almost genuine. "I will send a car at 7. I closed the door and leaned against it, one hand pressed to my racing heart. Patricia's voice echoed in my mind. "Watch your back." But he was the father of my child, and maybe, just maybe, people could change. The next evening, a sleek black town car arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. The driver held the door for me as I climbed carefully into the leather interior. My navy maternity dress, chosen for elegance without appearing to try too hard. Laurence was one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, the kind of place where tables were booked months in advance, and the prix-fixe menu started at $300 per person. I had dined there several times during my marriage, always on Brandon's arm, always playing the role of the perfect wife. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. His smile was warm but professionally neutral as he escorted me through the main dining room, past tables of well-dressed couples and business executives, toward a private room in the back. My heels sank into plush carpet as I followed him down a narrow hallway. The sounds of the main restaurant faded behind us, replaced by a muffled quiet that felt almost oppressive. I pushed open the door. Brandon sat at the head of a long table, but he was not alone. Cassandra Hayes occupied the chair beside him, very much not broken up with. She wore a crimson dress that matched her perfectly painted lips, and her smile was triumphant as our eyes met. Across from them sat two attorneys I did not recognize, and a court reporter with a stenography machine, fingers poised over the keys. I froze in the doorway. "Sit down, Abigail." Brandon's voice was cold and businesslike, nothing like the humble man who had stood at my door with the flowers. "We have matters to discuss." "What is this? You said dinner." Cassandra laughed. The sound was musical and cruel. "Oh, sweetie, did you actually think he wanted you back? This was my idea. Soften you up, get you relaxed, make this easier." She slid a thick document across the polished table. It spun slightly before coming to rest in front of an empty chair. "Though I have to admit," Cassandra continued, "I did not expect you to fall for it so easily. Brandon said you were naive, but this is almost sad." My hands trembled as I stepped forward and picked up the document. The words at the top swam before my eyes for a moment before resolving into a phrase that stopped my heart. "Petition for emergency custody. I am filing for full custody of our child." Brandon's face showed no trace of the man who had stood at my door with flowers. No trace of the vulnerability he had performed so convincingly. "My attorneys have compiled evidence that you are financially unstable, emotionally fragile from the divorce, and unfit to raise a Whitmore heir." That is insane. I forced the words past the tightness in my throat. "None of that is true. We are also prepared to testify that you deliberately hid your pregnancy to use as leverage in divorce proceedings." Cassandra's smile widened. "That shows manipulative, predatory behavior, hardly the qualities of a fit mother." I looked at Brandon, searching for any trace of the man I had married. The man who had held my hand during the first fertility treatment. The man who had cried when the doctor told us it would be difficult to conceive. He looked back at me like I was a stranger, like I was an obstacle to be removed. "Sign the agreement, Abigail. Give me primary custody, and I will ensure you have reasonable visitation. Fight me, and I will bury you in litigation until our son graduates high school. The Whitmore family has more money than you will see in 10 lifetimes." "Sauces." Cassandra leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "Can you really afford this battle?" I stood there for a long moment, the document clutched in my shaking hands. The trap was elegant in its cruelty. Brandon's false apology, the dinner invitation, the promise of reconciliation, all designed to lure me here, off balance and unprepared, so they could deliver this blow. I set the document down on the table. My legs shook, but my voice did not. "I will not sign anything." "Then we will see you in court." Brandon's tone was dismissive, already moving on to the next item on his agenda. "Oh, and Abigail?" Cassandra's voice followed me as I turned toward the door. "That pathetic little apartment you are living in? We have people watching. Everything you do, everyone you see, we will know. One wrong move, and we will use it against you." I walked out. My heels clicked against the marble floor of the hallway, each step carrying me farther from the trap they had set. The sound of Cassandra's laughter echoed behind me, sharp and mocking. I made it to the sidewalk before my composure shattered. The panic attack hit like a freight train. My vision blurred around the edges. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, my temples, my fingertips. I doubled over, hands on my knees, gasping for air that did not seem to reach my lungs. A passing couple stopped, their faces swimming in and out of focus. Miss, are you all right? Should we call someone? I waved them off with a shaking hand. Fine, I am fine. I was not fine. But I could not explain that to strangers. Could not explain that I was 7 months pregnant and alone and about to lose my child to the man who had spent 8 years breaking me down piece by piece. I stumbled to a bench and sat down, pressing one hand to my racing heart and the other to my belly. Beneath my palm, my son kicked, as if to remind me that I was not alone, that I was fighting for both of us. 20 minutes passed before my breathing steadied enough to stand. I called a cab, gave my address, and rode home in silence, staring out the window at the city lights blurring past. Alone, pregnant, terrified, but not defeated. Not yet. The next morning found me in Patricia Morrison's office, watching her expression darken as she paged through Brandon's custody filing. Her corner office was cluttered with case files and legal volumes, but there was a warmth to it that the sterile conference room at Hamilton and Associates had lacked. Family photos on the desk, a jade plant thriving on the windowsill, certificates of appreciation from women's shelters on the walls. He is claiming you hid the pregnancy to extort him. Patricia's voice was flat, controlled. That you have a history of emotional instability, that your freelance income makes you unable to provide stable care. None of that is true. I know that. You know that. She set down the papers and looked at me directly, her dark eyes serious. But truth does not always win in family court, Abigail, especially against the Whitmore family. Brandon's father was a state senator. His uncle sits on the appeals court. They have connections everywhere. My stomach clenched. So what do I do? We fight anyway. Patricia leaned forward, her elbows on the desk. But I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. They will dig into every mistake you have ever made, every bad day, every moment of weakness. They will take things out of context and twist them until you do not recognize your own life. I took a shaky breath. My son kicked, as if in agreement, as if to say, we can do this. Whatever it takes, I will not let them take my son. Patricia nodded slowly. Good, then here is what we are going to do. We spent the next 3 hours going over strategy. Patricia explained the legal landscape, the likely timeline, the hurdles we would face. Brandon had money and connections. He had high-priced attorneys who specialized in custody battles. He had Cassandra whispering in his ear, coaching him on how to destroy me. But we had the truth, and we had evidence. I told Patricia everything. The text Brandon had sent during our marriage. Cruel messages I had saved because some part of me knew I might need them someday. The voicemails where he called me worthless, defective, a waste of his time. The emails where he threatened to divorce me if I could not give him an heir. This is good. Patricia made notes as I spoke. This shows a pattern of emotional abuse. It undermines his claim that you are unstable and he is the reasonable one. Will it be enough? She hesitated. I do not know, but we are going to find out. That afternoon, I had a prenatal appointment at Women's Health Associates. The clinic was on the ground floor of a medical building near the park, with large windows that let in natural light and murals of animals and rainbows painted on the walls. My previous obstetrician had retired 2 months earlier, leaving me to navigate the chaos of finding new care while simultaneously falling apart. The clinic had been recommended by a friend of Patricia's, and the moment I walked in, I understood why. This was not like the cold, clinical offices Brandon's money had paid for during our fertility treatments. This was a place designed to make women feel safe. The nurse who took my vitals was gentle and thorough, chatting with me about my due date and asking questions about my stress levels with genuine concern. My blood pressure was elevated, she noted, higher than it should be. She promised the doctor would want to discuss it. I sat in the examination room, paper crinkling beneath me on the table, and tried to calm my racing heart. The stress of the past few days had taken its toll. I had barely slept since the restaurant ambush, my mind spinning through worst-case scenarios whenever I closed my eyes. The door opened and Dr. Michael Torres entered. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark curly hair that fell across his forehead in a way that suggested he had more important things to worry about than styling it. Warm brown eyes behind simple wire-frame glasses. He wore his white coat over a casual button-down shirt, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who was very good at what he did. But there was something else in his expression, a weariness that suggested he carried burdens of his own, shadow beneath the professional calm. "Miss Carter, I am Dr. Torres." His voice was warm, unhurried. "I see your blood pressure is elevated. Want to tell me what is going on?" Something about his manner broke through my defenses. Maybe it was the genuine concern in his eyes. Maybe it was simply that I was exhausted from holding everything together. Whatever the reason, I found myself talking. I told him about the divorce, about the stress, about Brandon's custody filing, and the uncertainty that hung over my future like a storm cloud. I did not go into every detail, but I gave him enough to understand why my blood pressure might be through the roof. Michael listened without judgment. He did not interrupt, did not offer platitudes, did not try to fix things he could not fix. He simply listened, his attention fully present in a way that felt rare and precious. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "That is a lot for anyone to carry," he said finally, "let alone someone in their third trimester." He pulled up a rolling stool and sat down, bringing himself to my eye level. The gesture was deliberate, I realized, putting us on equal footing, removing the power imbalance that came with being a doctor talking down to a patient. "Can I share something with you? Doctor to patient, but also person to person?" I nodded, not sure what to expect. "3 years ago, my wife left me." He said it simply, without self-pity. "She said I was married to my job, not to her. And the truth is, she was not wrong. I was so focused on being a good doctor that I forgot how to be a good husband, a good father." "You have children?" "A daughter, Emma. She is 6 now. Lives in Seattle with her mother. I see her twice a year." The pain in his voice was unmistakable, even though he kept his tone even. "I tell you this because I understand what it is like to feel like you have failed, to have someone look at you and decide you are not enough. But here is what I have learned." He paused, making sure I was listening. "The only person whose opinion actually matters is your own, and the only way forward is to keep going." He handed me a prescription for prenatal vitamins and a referral for a therapist who specialized in helping women through high-stress pregnancies. "Focus on what you can control, your health, your baby's health. The legal stuff is important, but this little one needs you strong." He tapped the edge of the prescription pad. "I want to see you every 2 weeks until your due date, more often if your blood pressure does not come down. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me directly." He scribbled a number on the back of his card, his personal cell phone. "I do not give this out to everyone," he said, "but something tells me you might need it." It was the first genuine kindness I had received from anyone outside Patricia's office in weeks. I felt tears prick at my eyes and blinked them back. "Thank you. You are going to get through this, Miss Carter." He stood, but his eyes held mine for a moment longer. "I believe that, and I hope someday you will too." Later that afternoon, walking to my car in the clinic parking lot, I saw a familiar face. The woman from the grocery store. Elegant, silver blonde hair, standing beside a luxury sedan in the far corner of the lot, watching me with that same strange, pained expression. This time, I did not let her get away. I changed direction, walking straight toward her. She startled when she realized I was approaching, her perfectly manicured hand reaching for the car door. "You were at the grocery store last week." I stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the guilt in her eyes. "And now you are here. You have been watching me. I want to know why." The woman's composure cracked. She looked around nervously, as if checking for witnesses. "I am no one. I am sorry to have disturbed you." "That is not an answer. Who are you?" She hesitated. Her hand trembled on the car door handle. Something was clearly at war inside her, some internal battle between speaking and staying silent. "My name is Victoria. I cannot tell you more than that. Not yet." Her voice dropped. "But please be careful. The people around Brandon Whitmore are not who they seem." She got him into her car before I could ask another question. The engine purred to life and she pulled out of the parking space with practiced precision, disappearing around the corner of the building without looking back. I stood in the parking lot, mind racing. Who was she? How did she know Brandon? What did she mean the people around him were not who they seemed? I filed the encounter away. I had bigger problems right now. But I did not forget it. I would not forget it. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia and I worked tirelessly to build my case. We gathered financial records proving my stability, bank statements showing my escape fund, tax returns from my freelance work, a detailed budget demonstrating I could provide for myself and a child. We collected character witnesses, former colleagues from before my marriage who remembered me as competent and kind, friends I had reconnected with after leaving Brandon, my landlord who testified to my reliability and quiet nature, Mrs. Miller from upstairs, who spoke about the young woman who always helped her carry groceries and never complained about the baby crying through the thin walls. We documented everything I could remember about Brandon's behavior during our marriage. Every cruel text message, every cutting voicemail, every email dripping with contempt. Patricia organized it all into a timeline that told the story of a man who had systematically broken down his wife and then blamed her for being broken. We have a decent case, Patricia told me at the end of the second week, but I will not lie to you. Brandon has resources we cannot match. He can drag this out for years. I do not have years, I have weeks. I know. She gathered her papers into a neat stack. The temporary custody hearing is scheduled for next Tuesday. If we can win that, you will have legal protection while we prepare for the final hearing. And if we lose? Patricia did not answer. She did not need to. The family courthouse was an imposing building of gray stone and columns, designed to convey the weight and seriousness of the decisions made within its walls. I entered through the main doors with Patricia at my side, my heart pounding despite the calm expression I had carefully arranged on my face. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights humming overhead, an American flag beside the judge's bench. It looked like any government office, but the decisions made here would shape the rest of my life. Brandon sat at the defendant's table with his legal team. 3 attorneys in expensive suits, all with the sleek, well-fed look of people who charge $500 an hour and never lost. He did not look at me when I entered. Cassandra was conspicuously absent. Patricia had advised me that the judge would not look kindly on the mistress attending custody proceedings. Apparently, Brandon's lawyers agreed. Judge Margaret Walsh presided from the bench. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. 30 years on the family court bench, Patricia had told me, known for being fair but skeptical, not easily swayed by money or influence. Let us begin, Judge Walsh said. This hearing concerns the emergency custody motion filed by Mr. Whitmore. Mr. Hartley, you may present your case. Brandon's lead attorney rose. He was a tall man with silver hair and the confident manner of someone accustomed to winning. He presented their case with smooth professionalism, painting a picture of a woman too unstable to be trusted with a child. He talked about my psychiatric history. 10 years ago, a brief hospitalization after my mother's death. I had checked myself in voluntarily when grief became overwhelming, stayed for 72 hours, and completed treatment successfully. But in his telling, it became evidence of deep-seated mental illness. He talked about my finances, the modest apartment, the freelance income, the lack of a steady job. In his telling, my independence became proof of instability. He talked about the timing of my pregnancy reveal, waiting until the divorce signing to show Brandon. In his telling, it became manipulation rather than self-protection. When he finished, I felt sick. He had taken my life and twisted it into something I barely recognized. Then it was Patricia's turn. She stood slowly, deliberately. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. Your Honor, opposing counsel has painted a picture that bears little resemblance to reality. Let me show you what actually happened in this marriage. She presented our evidence systematically, the financial records showing my savings and stability, the character witnesses who described me as competent, caring, and kind, the documentation of Brandon's behavior during our marriage, and then she played the text messages. She had arranged them on a large screen, one after another, dates and times visible. The words Brandon had sent me during our marriage, displayed for everyone to see. You are pathetic. 6 years of trying and you cannot even give me one child. Maybe I should find a wife who actually works. I cannot believe I wasted my best years on you. You are defective, broken, a disappointment in every way. The courtroom went silent as the messages scrolled past. Brandon's face remained impassive, but I saw his jaw tighten with each new revelation. Judge Walsh studied the evidence with an unreadable expression. When Patricia finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Whitmore, her voice was cool. I have reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. I see no indication that Ms. Carter poses any danger to this child. Your claims of emotional instability appear to be based primarily on the fact that your wife experienced normal human emotions during a difficult marriage. Brandon's attorney started to object. Judge Walsh silenced him with a look. Temporary custody is awarded to the mother. Mr. Whitmore will have supervised visitation rights once the child is born. We will revisit permanent custody in 6 months. I nearly collapsed with relief. Patricia squeezed my hand under the table. We had won. Not the war, but an important battle. Outside the courthouse, Brandon caught up to me on the steps. His attorneys hung back, watching from a distance. This is not over, Abigail. I met his gaze without flinching. The judge disagrees. He leaned close, his voice dropping to something only I could hear. That judge will not be on the bench forever. Enjoy your victory. It will not last. He walked away without looking back, but his words stayed with me, echoing through the triumph like a cold wind. 2 days later, I returned home from the grocery store to find Cassandra waiting in my building's lobby. She sat on the worn couch near the mailboxes, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone as if she belonged there. When she saw me, she rose with that predator's grace I had come to recognize. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. I tried to walk past her toward the stairs. She moved to block my path. You think you won something in that courtroom? Her voice was pleasant, conversational. Anyone listening might think we were old friends catching up. You won a battle. I am going to win the war. Get out of my way. You do not understand what you are dealing with. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something expensive and cloying. Brandon might be playing nice because his lawyers told him to, but me? I do not have lawyers telling me anything. Her voice dropped to something intimate and cold. I have destroyed women who had more money, more connections, and more fight than you. By the time I am done, you will be begging to hand over that baby just to make it stop. Is that a threat? Her smile widened. It is a promise. Sweet dreams, Abigail. She walked past me toward the exit, her shoulder brushing mine. The contact felt deliberate, aggressive. I stood frozen in the lobby until the door closed behind her. Then I climbed the stairs to my apartment with shaking legs, locked the door behind me, and sat on my couch in the gathering darkness. Her words echoed in my mind. I have destroyed women who had more money, more connections, and more fight than you. Women. Plural. What did she mean by that? 3 nights later, I woke at 2 in the morning to sharp pain. It came without warning, a sudden cramping in my abdomen that made me gasp and curl into a ball. For a moment, I thought it might be a dream, some stress-induced nightmare. Then the pain came again, sharper this time, and I knew something was wrong. I stumbled out of bed and into the bathroom, turned on the light. Blood, not a lot, but enough to send ice water through my veins. Panic, pure paralyzing panic. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called 911, gave my address, described what was happening in a voice that did not sound like my own. Then, without consciously deciding to, I called Michael. He answered on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. Miss Carter, what is wrong? Something is happening. There is blood. I called an ambulance, but I am scared, and I did not know who else. I will meet you at the hospital. Do not hang up. I will stay on the line until the paramedics arrive. True to his word, he talked me through the next 10 minutes, kept his voice calm and steady while mine shook. Asked questions about the pain and the bleeding that I answered as best I could. When I heard the sirens approaching, he said, I am on my way. You are not alone. The emergency room was bright and loud and overwhelming. Nurses took my vitals, asked questions, hooked me up to monitors. Through it all, I kept one hand pressed to my belly, willing my son to be okay. And then Michael was there. He was off duty, still in jeans and a rumpled t-shirt, his hair uncombed. But he came the moment I called. He spoke to the ER doctors in quiet, authoritative tones, reviewing charts, asking questions I would not have known to ask. The diagnosis came an hour later. Placental abruption, partial separation, not complete but dangerous. The ER doctor explained it in clinical terms. The placenta had partially separated from my uterine wall. If it separated further, it could endanger both me and the baby. I needed strict bed rest for the remainder of my pregnancy. Any significant stress could cause complete separation. I lay in the hospital bed, hand on my belly, terrified. I cannot do bed rest. I have court dates. I have work. Abigail, Michael's voice was gentle but firm. He took my hand. If you do not rest, you could lose this baby. Nothing else matters right now. The weight of it crashed over me. Everything I had been fighting for, everything I had sacrificed and struggled for, all of it could be lost in an instant. Not because of Brandon, not because of Cassandra, but because my own body had decided to betray me. I am so tired of being strong. Then let someone else be strong for you, just for a little while. I closed my eyes. Tears slipped down my cheeks. For the first time in months, I let myself be weak. The next morning, I woke to find Brandon standing at the foot of my hospital bed. He was holding flowers, bright yellow chrysanthemums, cheerful and mocking. He set them on the bedside table with exaggerated care. I heard about your little emergency. Such a shame. I struggled to sit up, my heart pounding. How did you get in here? I did not authorize. The Whitmore family donated the east wing of this hospital. His smile did not reach his eyes. I can go wherever I want. He pulled a document from his jacket pocket, dropped it on my lap like a bomb. Here's the situation. You are on bed rest. You cannot work. You cannot attend hearings. You certainly cannot care for yourself, let alone a newborn. I picked up the document with trembling hands. Emergency motion for temporary custody transfer. I have filed an emergency motion. Medical records from last night prove you are high risk, unable to care for yourself. My attorneys are arguing that custody should transfer to me immediately after birth. You cannot. I can. I have. You have 72 hours to respond. He straightened his tie, checking his reflection in the window. Oh, and Abigail? That doctor who rushed here in the middle of the night? The one sitting with you when you were admitted? I have made a note of that. Might be relevant. He walked out without another word. I stared at the document in my hands. The words blurred through my tears. I could not fight from a hospital bed. I could not work. I could not even stand up without risking my baby's life. And Brandon knew it. He was counting on it. Patricia's face on the video call was grim. They found something, Abigail, from your past. I was propped up in the hospital bed, laptop balanced on a tray table. 3 days into my ordered bed rest, and already I felt like a caged animal. What are you talking about? 10 years ago, you were 22. There is a police report. You were held for psychiatric evaluation after a breakdown. My blood ran cold. That was after my mother died. I was grieving. I checked myself in voluntarily. I know, but Brandon's attorneys are spinning it as a history of mental instability requiring professional intervention. Patricia's voice was carefully neutral, the way it got when she was delivering bad news. They have filed a motion to subpoena your medical records from that period. Can they do that? They are arguing it is relevant to your fitness as a parent. Patricia paused. The judge allowed it. The room seemed to spin around me. That breakdown, the darkest period of my life. I had been 22, fresh out of college, when my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 6 months later, she was gone. I had fallen apart completely. Could not eat, could not sleep, could not function. Finally, in desperation, I had checked myself into a facility for 72 hours. They had helped me process the grief, given me tools to cope. I had emerged stronger, healthier, ready to face the world again. It had been private, sacred. A chapter of my life I had closed and moved past. Now Brandon would use it against me. He is going to tell everyone I am crazy. We will fight it. Your records will show you sought help voluntarily and completed treatment successfully. That is a sign of strength, not weakness. Will the judge see it that way? Patricia hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Maybe you know what this feels like. That moment when every path forward seems blocked, when the people who should protect you are the ones causing harm, when you are at your most vulnerable and that vulnerability becomes a weapon used against you. I lay in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling and wondered how much more I could take. A few days later, Michael visited after his shift. He brought soup from my favorite restaurant and a sketchbook. He remembered me mentioning that I used to draw before Brandon convinced me I had no talent. We talked for hours about everything, about nothing. He told me about Emma, about the guilt he carried for not being there when she needed him. I told him about the dreams I had given up for Brandon, the art degree I had started but never finished, the designs I had wanted to create but had been told were impractical. The connection was undeniable. Not romantic, not yet, but something real, something that felt like hope. When all of this is over, Michael said softly, I would like to take you to dinner. A real dinner. Not as your doctor, but as someone who cares about you. I smiled despite everything. I would like that. He leaned forward, kissed my forehead gently. The touch was tender, respectful, nothing more than a gesture of comfort. Get some rest. I will check on you tomorrow. He left. I watched him go, feeling something warm unfurl in my chest for the first time in months. What neither of us knew was that a photographer was positioned outside the window, telephoto lens, hired by Cassandra. The next morning, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications, text messages, voicemails, news alerts, my name everywhere. With trembling hands, I opened the first article. Whitmore custody battle. Pregnant ex-wife's secret affair with doctor exposed. The photos were damning. Michael entering my room at night. The forehead kiss through the window. Our hands intertwined. But the photos had been edited. The angle made the forehead kiss look like something more. One image had been digitally altered. Michael's head positioned closer, our bodies angled to suggest intimacy that never happened. Brandon's quote in the article turned my stomach. This proves what I have been saying. My ex-wife is emotionally unstable, jumping into an inappropriate relationship with her treating physician while carrying my child. I worry deeply about the judgment of anyone who would behave this way. Patricia called frantic. Please tell me this is not what it looks like. Nothing happened. He kissed my forehead. That is not what those photos show. Brandon's attorneys are filing an emergency motion based on moral unfitness and inappropriate relationship with treating physician. Those photos are doctored. Can you prove that? Silence stretched between us. I could not prove it. The photos looked real. Anyone looking at them would see what they were meant to see. There is more, Patricia's voice dropped. They have filed a complaint against Dr. Torres with the state medical board. They are claiming he violated professional boundaries with a vulnerable patient. He could lose his license. Yes, he could. I closed my eyes. Michael had done nothing wrong. He had been kind to me, supportive, nothing more. And now his career was at risk because of that kindness. That afternoon, Michael called. His voice was flat, defeated. The hospital suspended me pending investigation. They are worried about liability. Michael, I am so sorry. This is not your fault. But Abigail, I cannot see you anymore. Any contact between us gives them more ammunition for both of us. I understand. I am sorry. I wish I could be there for you. The call ended. I stared at the phone in my hand. The screen blurred through my tears. Patricia arrived an hour later with more news. The emergency hearing is tomorrow. Given the tabloid story, the medical records from your breakdown, your hospitalization, she took a breath. I have to be honest with you, Abigail. We might lose. What happens if we lose? Brandon gets temporary custody while the final hearing is prepared. Given your current medical condition, it could be months before you are deemed fit to challenge it. I placed my hands on my belly. My son kicked, strong and alive, and depending on me. I was on bed rest, forbidden to fight. My only ally had been forced away. My past had been weaponized. My present had been fabricated. And tomorrow I might lose my child. That night at 11 o'clock, while the hospital slept around me, I lay in bed with my phone in hand. Sleep would not come anyway. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the courtroom. The judge, Brandon's smug face as they handed him my son. I refused to let that be my future. I started searching. Cassandra Hayes, society pages, business articles, social media archives from years past. Something she had said in the lobby kept nagging at me. I have destroyed women who had more money, more connections, and more fight than you. Women, plural, not a woman, women. If Cassandra had done this before, there would be evidence, patterns, victims who might be willing to talk. I started with the obvious, searched her name alongside Brandon's, found engagement announcements, society page mentions, the usual fluff. Nothing useful. Then I searched her name alone, dug deeper, past the first page of results, past the carefully curated social media presence, into the archives. And I found a pattern. 3 years ago, Cassandra was engaged to David Bennett, a real estate developer. He had divorced his wife Sarah to be with Cassandra. 6 months after the engagement announcement, Cassandra left David. 1 month after that, Sarah Bennett was found dead. Suicide. 5 years ago, Cassandra dated Marcus Cole, a tech executive. He had left his wife to be with her. The wife lost custody of their children in a brutal divorce. Marcus and Cassandra broke up shortly after. 7 years ago, Cassandra was linked to William Thorne, heir to a shipping fortune. His wife filed for divorce citing emotional cruelty, but the details were sealed. 3 wealthy men, 3 destroyed marriages, 1 dead woman. I took screenshots of everything. At 2 in the morning, I found an article about Sarah Bennett's death. A quote from Sarah's sister caught my attention. My sister did not kill herself because of depression. She was destroyed by a predator who targeted her husband, and no one is doing anything about it. I searched for Rachel Bennett, found her on LinkedIn, sent a message. My name is Abigail Carter. I am currently in a custody battle with Brandon Whitmore, whose fiancée is Cassandra Hayes. I believe Cassandra has done this before. I believe she did it to your sister. Please contact me if you are willing to talk. I did not expect a response. Not really. It was the middle of the night and I was a stranger reaching out with wild accusations. At 3:47, my phone buzzed. Finally, someone else who sees what she is. I have been gathering evidence for 3 years. Call me. Rachel Bennett appeared on my screen, a video call from across the country. She was in her mid-40s with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. But her gaze was fierce, determined. Cassandra Hayes destroyed my sister's marriage and drove her to suicide. I have spent 3 years trying to prove it. No one would listen. I am listening now. Rachel shared what she had gathered. Evidence that Cassandra had systematically isolated Sarah from her support network, cutting off friends and family one by one. Financial records showing Cassandra received gifts from David during the affair worth over $200,000. Testimony from David himself, who finally admitted that Cassandra had been coaching him on how to win custody. And a letter, Sarah's letter, written the night before she died, documenting everything Cassandra had done. This is incredible. I scrolled through the files Rachel was sharing. Why did you not go to the police? I did. They said harassment is not a crime, that suicide is not murder, that I was just a grieving sister looking for someone to blame. Rachel's voice was bitter. They did not want to hear that a beautiful blonde socialite might be a predator. What about now? If we can show it a pattern? Now we have something we did not have before. Rachel leaned toward the camera. You, a current victim who can testify about what Cassandra is doing in real time. My hearing is tomorrow. Today, actually. Then let us make today count. The morning of the hearing, I was being prepared for transport to the courthouse. Patricia had arranged for a wheelchair and a medical escort. The doctors were not happy about me leaving the hospital, but they understood that staying would cost me far more than going. A knock came at the door. A nurse opened it. Victoria Hayes stood in the doorway. The woman from the grocery store, the parking lot, the one who had warned me to be careful. I struggled to sit up, sir. What are you doing here? May I come in? Patricia stepped forward protectively. My client is about to leave for a hearing. She does not have time. Please, Victoria's voice was thin, desperate. What I have to say could change everything. Against Patricia's protests, I nodded. Let her in. Victoria sat in the chair beside my bed. Her hands trembled in her lap. Up close, I could see that her elegant composure was a facade, dark circles under her eyes, lines of strain around her mouth. She looked like a woman who had not slept in weeks. My name is Victoria Hayes. Cassandra is my daughter. Every muscle in my body tensed. Patricia's hand moved toward her phone. I am not here to defend her. Victoria raised her hands in a gesture of surrender. I am here because I cannot watch her destroy another family. She pulled out her phone, opened an audio file. I recorded this 2 weeks ago. Cassandra did not know I was listening. She pressed play. Cassandra's voice, clear and cold, filled the hospital room. Brandon is useful, but he is not the end game. Once I have his ring and that baby, I will have everything I need. His heart condition makes the rest easy. 6 months, maybe a year. Just a few doses. Grieving widow inherits everything. And the kid, the Whitmore Trust pays out until he turns 25. I will be set for life. The room went silent. She is planning to kill him. Patricia's voice was barely above a whisper. She has planned everything. She always does. Victoria's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her carefully made-up cheeks. I have watched my daughter become a monster. I made excuse. Gave her money when she needed it. Looked the other way when people got hurt. But this, she is talking about murder. About using an innocent child as a meal ticket. Why now, I asked. Why help me? Because Sarah Bennett, the woman who died 3 years ago, I knew her. We were on the same charity board. She was kind to me when no one else was. Victoria's voice broke. When she died, I knew. I knew Cassandra was involved. I have been gathering evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment. She pulled out a folder. Inside were bank records, emails, photographs. Everything I have. 3 years of watching, documenting, waiting. Use it. Stop her. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Patricia reviewed the evidence while I rested in my wheelchair. The medical escort monitored my vitals, frowning at numbers I could not see. This is explosive. Patricia flipped through the pages. But we need to be strategic. If we play it wrong, Brandon's attorneys will claim it as fabricated. Cassandra will disappear before police can act. What do you recommend? We present the custody evidence first, your research, Rachel Bennett's testimony, Victoria's supporting documents. We establish the pattern. And the recording? We save that for last, maximum impact. By the time we play it, the judge will already know what kind of person Cassandra is. The recording will just confirm it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know Victoria visited you. Whatever she gave you will not work. Drop this or I will make sure that baby never knows its mother. I showed Patricia. She is scared. Patricia's smile was grim. Good. Scared people make mistakes. I entered the courtroom in a wheelchair. Pale. Exhausted. 8.5 months pregnant. With dark circles under my eyes and an IV port still visible on the back of my hand. I looked like exactly what I was. A woman fighting for her child with everything she had left. Brandon sat at the defendant's table with his legal team. He looked confident, comfortable, as if this hearing were a mere formality. He thought he had already won. Cassandra was absent. Brandon's attorneys had advised against her presence, given the tabloid scandal. A small mercy. Judge Margaret Walsh presided from the bench. She studied me with an expression that was harder to read than before. The tabloid photos, the medical records. She had seen all of it. Given Ms. Carter's medical condition, I will allow her to remain seated throughout. Judge Walsh's voice was neutral. This hearing concerns the emergency custody motion filed by Mr. Whitmore, as well as pending motions from both parties. Ms. Morrison, you may begin. Brandon's attorney presented first. He walked the judge through my psychiatric history again, emphasizing dates and clinical language. He showed the tabloid photos, enlarged on a screen, pointing out the supposed intimacy between me and Michael. He described my current medical condition in terms designed to make me sound fragile, unstable, incapable. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Ms. Carter has a documented history of mental instability. She has engaged in an inappropriate relationship with her treating physician. She is currently hospitalized with complications that prove she cannot care for herself, let alone a newborn. The Whitmore family offers stability, resources, and safety. When he sat down, I felt sick. He had made me sound like a danger to my own child. Patricia rose. Your Honor, I have evidence that fundamentally changes the nature of this proceeding. Evidence that Mr. Whitmore's fiancée, Cassandra Hayes, has a documented pattern of targeting wealthy married men, destroying their families, and profiting from the destruction. Brandon's attorney was on his feet immediately. Objection. This is completely irrelevant to custody. Overruled. Judge Walsh leaned forward. I want to hear this. Patricia called her first witness. Rachel Bennett appeared via video link, her face filling a large screen beside the judge's bench. Rachel testified with quiet, devastating precision. She described how Cassandra had entered her sister's life, how Sarah had been isolated from her support network, her friends and family cut off one by one, how Cassandra had coached David on legal strategies during the divorce, helping him build a case against his own wife, how Sarah had been harassed, threatened, driven to despair, and she read from Sarah's letter, the words her sister had written the night before she died. She has taken everything from me, my husband, my children, my will to live. I do not know what I did to deserve her attention, but I know I will never escape it. By the time you read this, I will be gone. Maybe then she will leave David alone. Maybe then my children will be safe. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Brandon's face changed as Rachel testified. Confusion first, then doubt, then something that might have been dawning horror. Patricia presented financial records showing Cassandra's pattern across multiple relationships. Bank transfers, gift receipts, property transfers. The amounts were staggering. Over $2 million extracted from various men over nearly a decade. Your Honor, Cassandra Hayes is not a woman who fell in love with Brandon Whitmore. She is a professional predator who selected him as her next target. This is disturbing, Ms. Morrison. Judge Walsh's voice was measured. But what does it have to do with custody? Everything, Your Honor. Because Cassandra Hayes has been orchestrating this entire custody battle to serve her own purposes, and I have proof. Victoria Hayes took the stand. Brandon stared at her as she walked past him, clearly not expecting Cassandra's mother to appear, clearly not understanding what was happening. Victoria testified in a trembling voice. She described how Cassandra had told her about the plan months ago, how Cassandra had specifically chosen Brandon because of his heart condition, how the tabloid photos had been deliberately staged, the photographer hired by Cassandra herself, how the custody battle was never about the child. It was about control. My daughter said, and I quote, Brandon's heart medication makes this easy. 6 months of marriage, adjust a few doses, grieving widow inherits everything. Brandon went pale. His attorneys huddled around him, whispering frantically, Your Honor, this is hearsay. We object. It is not hearsay, Your Honor. Patricia's voice rang clear. Because I have the recording. She pressed play. Cassandra's voice filled the courtroom. Brandon is useful, but he is not the endgame. Once I have his ring and that baby, I will have everything I need. His heart condition makes the rest easy. 6 months, maybe a year. Adjust a few doses. Grieving widow inherits everything. And the kid? The Whitmore Trust pays out until he turns 25. I will be set for life. Dead silence. Whoa. Brandon stood suddenly, knocking his chair backward. His face cycled through emotions. Shock, horror, betrayal, rage. That is, she would not... Mr. Whitmore, sit down. She told me she loved me. She said Abigail was the problem. Brandon, stop talking. His attorney grabbed his arm. I believed her. I believed her. He was shaking, the carefully constructed facade crumbling in front of everyone. Order, Judge Walsh's voice cracked like a whip. Mr. Whitmore, control yourself or I will have you removed. Brandon sat. His hands covered his face. Ms. Morrison, this evidence is significant. Judge Walsh's voice was grave. I am calling a 1-hour recess. During this time, I will be contacting law enforcement regarding Ms. Hayes. During the recess, the courthouse became a hive of activity. Police officers arrived, took statements, consulted with attorneys. An arrest warrant was being prepared for Cassandra Hayes. Brandon sat alone on a bench in the hallway. His attorneys hovered nearby, speaking in low, urgent tones, but he was not listening. He stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped, looking like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. I was wheeled past him on the way to a quiet room where Patricia wanted to review our next steps. I stopped. "Brandon." He looked up. His gray eyes were red-rimmed, wet. "I almost—" He could not finish the sentence. "She was going to—" "I know. I destroyed our marriage for her. I called you defective. I tried to take our son." His voice cracked. "For her." "Yes, you did." He broke down, sobs racking his body. The great Brandon Whitmore reduced to tears in a courthouse hallway, stripped of his arrogance and his certainty and his cruel confidence. I watched him for a moment. Part of me felt satisfied. Part of me felt sorry for him. But mostly I felt nothing. He had made his choices. He had to live with them. I signaled to my escort, "Let us go." I did not offer comfort, did not offer forgiveness. That was not my job anymore. When Judge Walsh returned, her expression was grave. "In my 30 years on the bench, I have never seen a case quite like this one." She addressed Brandon first. "Mr. Whitmore, you filed for custody based on allegations that have been thoroughly discredited. Your claims of Ms. Carter's mental instability were based on a decade-old grief reaction that she handled responsibly. Your claims of an inappropriate relationship were based on photographs that were, by the evidence presented, deliberately staged and edited to create a false impression." She turned to me. "Ms. Carter, you have demonstrated remarkable strength under extraordinary circumstances. You conducted your own investigation from a hospital bed, built alliances, and exposed a genuine threat, not just to yourself, but to Mr. Whitmore as well." She delivered the ruling. Full custody is awarded to Abigail Carter. Mr. Whitmore's visitation rights are suspended pending psychiatric evaluation and completion of a parenting program. Child support will be determined at a separate hearing. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into Cassandra Hayes's activities. Ms. Hayes is to have no contact with the minor child under any circumstances. The gavel fell. I closed my eyes. Let the relief wash over me. It was over. I had won. That evening, the news broke. Breaking news tonight. Cassandra Hayes, socialite and fiancée of real estate heir Brandon Whitmore, has been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and extortion. Hayes was apprehended at a private airfield attempting to flee the country. Footage showed Cassandra in handcuffs, her perfect hair disheveled, her ice blue eyes blazing with impotent rage as officers led her to a waiting car. Prosecutors say this arrest is connected to a custody case that revealed Hayes's pattern of targeting wealthy men. Additional charges may be forthcoming as investigators review evidence of similar schemes spanning nearly a decade. I watched the broadcast from my hospital bed, one hand resting on my belly. My son kicked as if celebrating with me. 2 weeks later, Oliver James Carter entered the world. The delivery was difficult, 16 hours of labor complicated by my recent medical issues. But at 4:47 in the afternoon, my son arrived. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, dark hair like his father, strong lungs announcing his presence to everyone in the delivery room. When the nurse placed him on my chest, I looked down at my son and felt a love so overwhelming it nearly stopped my heart. "Hello, Oliver." My voice was thick with tears. "I am your mama. I fought so hard for you, sweet boy, and I would do it all again." I held him close. This child, this miracle, this proof that I was never broken, never defective, just waiting for the right moment to bloom. 3 months later, I sat in my apartment with Oliver sleeping in his crib. Motherhood was harder than I had imagined, exhausting in ways I had not anticipated. But it was also more rewarding than anything I had ever done. Every time Oliver smiled, every time he grabbed my finger with his tiny hand, every time he looked at me with those dark eyes that were so like his father's, and yet somehow completely his own, I knew that everything I had been through was worth it. A knock came at my door. Michael Torres stood in the hallway. He looked different than the last time I had seen him. Lighter, the weariness that had shadowed his eyes was still there, but it was balanced now by something that looked like peace. "The medical board cleared me." His smile was genuine. All charges dropped once Cassandra's lies were exposed. The hospital offered my job back. Michael, that is wonderful. I turned them down. He leaned against the doorframe. I am opening my own practice, smaller, more personal, the kind of medicine I got into this for. He paused. And I finally had a real conversation with my ex-wife. We are working on a better arrangement for Emma. I am going to be more present. I am happy for you. There is something else. His eyes held mine. I have thought about you every day, about what I said in the hospital, about wanting to take you to dinner when this was over. It is over now. It is, so can I take you to dinner? I stepped aside, gesturing him into my small apartment. How about dinner here? There is someone I would like you to meet first. Michael met Oliver. He held the tiny baby like he was made of glass, his big hands gentle and careful. When Oliver grabbed his finger, something shifted in Michael's eyes. Wonder, hope, the beginning of something new. He is perfect. He is. We looked at each other over Oliver's sleeping form. A beginning, a possibility. 1 year later, the news reported Cassandra's sentencing. Cassandra Hayes was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and extortion. Prosecutors presented evidence of 4 previous victims, including testimony from the sister of a woman who died by suicide following Hayes' involvement with her husband. Footage showed Cassandra being led into prison, orange jumpsuit, hair flat and lifeless without her expensive styling products. Eyes empty. Hayes' assets have been seized. Her mother, Victoria Hayes, testified against her daughter and has established a foundation for victims of romance-based fraud. Brandon Whitmore sat alone in his vast, empty penthouse, the same one he had shared with me, the same one he had been so eager to fill with Cassandra. Now it was a tomb. He had completed his psychiatric evaluation, his parenting program. He had visitation rights. Once a month, supervised. Oliver did not know him. Cried when Brandon tried to hold him. Brandon stared at a photograph from our wedding day. I was smiling, hopeful, full of dreams for our future. He was arrogant, distracted, already half checked out. He poured himself a drink, then another. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Carter Torres, wedding announced. Designer and doctor to wed in spring ceremony. A photograph accompanied the headline. Me and Michael, our arms around each other. Oliver on Michael's shoulders, laughing at the camera. Brandon stared at it for a long time. Then he turned off his phone, sat in the darkness. Alone. 5 years later. Our house stood in a quiet neighborhood far from the penthouse towers where I had spent my marriage. Not a status symbol. A home. Tree in the front yard. Swing set in the back. A welcome mat that said, "All are welcome" in cheerful letters. Oliver, now 5, raced through the living room, chasing his twin siblings, Emma and James, both 3. The house was chaos, as it always was, toys scattered everywhere and sticky handprints on the windows. I would not have it any other way. Michael's daughter, Emma, now 11, helped me set the table for dinner. She visited every other weekend now, and for holidays, and for 3 weeks every summer. Michael's relationship with his ex-wife had healed to the point where they could coordinate without conflict. Emma called me Abby and treated her half-siblings with the protective fierceness of a big sister. Abby, Oliver said he is going to eat all the mashed potatoes. He says that every week, and every week there are plenty. Michael came in from the backyard where he had been grilling burgers. His apron was splattered with grill marks, and his hair was mussed from wrestling with the children. Dinner is ready. Oliver, hands washed? Yes, Dad. He called Michael Dad without hesitation. Because Michael was his dad, in every way that mattered. Later that night, after the children were finally asleep, I stood in my small art studio, a room of my own, something I had never had during my marriage. My paintings lined the walls, portraits of my children, landscapes of peace, abstract pieces that explored the journey from darkness to light. They sold now at galleries in the city for prices that still surprised me. One painting hung in a place of honor, a woman walking out of a glass door, sunlight streaming ahead of her, shadows falling behind. It was titled Forward. Michael appeared in the doorway. The kids are asleep. Even Oliver, finally. He is going to be trouble, that one. He is going to be amazing. like his mother. I turned to face him, this man who had found me at my lowest, who had believed in me when I could not believe in myself, who had built a family with me from the fragments of two broken lives. Do you remember that day in the hospital when I asked you why you became a doctor? I remember. You said healing is not just about treating symptoms. It is about treating the whole person. I still believe that. You healed me, Michael, not as a doctor, as a person. You showed me what it looks like to be seen, to be valued, to be loved without conditions. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me. You were never broken, Abigail. You were just waiting for someone who knew how to see you clearly. We stood together as the sun set outside the window, painting the room in shades of gold. That night, I tucked Oliver into bed. He fought sleep, as always, full of questions about the world. Mama, can I ask you something? Anything, sweet boy. Who is the man in the old picture? The one in your drawer? I froze for just a moment. Brandon's photograph. I had kept it for Oliver, for when he was old enough to understand. That is your birth father. His name is Brandon. Is he nice? I considered the question carefully. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that some people make terrible choices? That love is not enough if it comes with cruelty. He made some mistakes. He hurt people. But I think he is trying to be better. Will I meet him? Maybe someday, when you are ready. When he is ready. Oliver thought about this, his small brow furrowed. But Dad is my real dad, right? Yes, baby. Dad is your real dad. Good. Oliver smiled, satisfied. I like him. Me too. I kissed his forehead, turned off the light. I sat on the porch swing that night, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. 5 years ago, I walked into a lawyer's office, 7 months pregnant, ready to end a chapter of my life. I thought I was signing papers, closing a door, saying goodbye. I did not know I was saying hello. Hello to strength I did not know I had. Hello to love I did not think I deserved. Hello to a life I never imagined was possible. They called me defective, broken, useless. They tried to take my child, my dignity, my future. They failed. Here's what I have learned, and maybe this will matter to someone who needs to hear it. The people who try to break you are afraid of what you will become when you refuse to stay broken. They know that once you stand up, once you fight back, once you choose yourself, you become unstoppable. I was never defective. I was dormant, waiting for the right moment to bloom. And now I am exactly where I am supposed to be, with the family I fought for, in the life I built, as the woman I chose to become. If you are out there listening to this and you feel trapped, if someone has made you believe you are not enough, if you are afraid to fight because you think you will lose, listen to me carefully. You are not what they said. You are not what they did. You are not the worst moment of your life. You are everything that comes next. And everything that comes next, it can be beautiful. I promise. The porch door opened behind me. Michael stepped out with 2 mugs of tea, steam rising in the cool night air. Room for one more? I scooted over on the swing. He sat beside me, and I leaned into his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him against the chill. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different everything is. How scared I was. How sure I was that I would lose. But you did not. No, I did not. We sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in the darkness of the yard. The children slept inside, safe and loved. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, as tomorrow always did. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Make a wish, Michael said. I closed my eyes, smiled. I do not need to. I have everything I ever wanted. And I meant it, every word. The little girl who lost her mother. The young woman who lost herself in a bad marriage. The pregnant woman standing alone in a courthouse, facing impossible odds. She had made it through. She had built something beautiful from the ashes of what was destroyed. Not because she was special, not because she was lucky, because she refused to give up, because she chose herself, because she believed, even in the darkest moments, that there was something better waiting on the other side. And there was. There always is. for anyone brave enough to reach for it. The Torres family gathered on the porch as the last of the fireflies danced in the warm summer air. Inside, the children dreamed peaceful dreams. Outside, two people who had found their way through impossible circumstances sat wrapped in gratitude. Oliver would grow up knowing he was wanted, loved, fought for. The twins would grow up in a home filled with laughter. Emma would grow up with a father who finally learned to be present. And Abigail would continue to grow too, still becoming, still reaching for the light. Because that is what survivors do. They survive, they heal, they bloom, and then they help others do the same.